Alright, so Theros Beyond Death cards are now making a splash in Modern. All the way from Euro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, to Kroxa, all the way into Jund, as well as cards like Underworld Breach in Legacy, and Thassa's Oracle in Pioneer. However, there is one card I'm very excited for, this little Ox boy right here. So you're wondering, what does this Ox slide into, you may ask? Well, the answer? Dredge. This is the exact card Dredge has been looking for, and you know what? Exiling 8 cards from your graveyard, yeah, that seems like a pretty steep cost, but you know what's not hard for Dredge? Getting 8 cards into a graveyard. That is 1 Stinkweed Imp plus a Life from the Loam. 2 Golgari Thugs, 2 Stinkweed Imps is 2 over, 2 Golgari Thugs is Xaxes, etc. So this card will regularly cast for 2, make you pitch your hand and then draw 3, which translates into dredging up to 15 cards via 3 Life from the Loams. So we're going to try this deck out in Modern. This is the deck list right here. And we're running 9 fetch lands with 4 Bloodstained Mire, 4 Wooded Foothills, and 1 Arid Mesa to help fuel the Ox even more. We are only running 1 Conflagrate because I think we only need 1 for the main deck. The second one isn't entirely necessary, although it is a nice way to close out games. As well as we are choosing to run 3 Ox, 3 Merchant of the Veil, pretty standard. We got our Dredgers in 4 Stinkweed Imp, 2 Golgari Thug, 4 Life from the Loam. We have Cathartic Reunion and Merchant of the Veil's Haggle to get the cards into the graveyard. Bloodghast and Narcomoeba as cards coming out of the graveyard to fuel our 4 prized amalgams, 4 Shriekhorn to get things into the graveyard, 4 Creeping Chill as free lightning helixes, and that's about it. The land base, we have 2 Forgotten Cave that we can pick back up via Loam to cycle if we need to. Sideboard, we have decent, we have Tron Hate in Alpine Moon, as well as Titan Hate if they're running Field of the Dead or Valakut. We have Ancient Guards for any artifact decks, 2 Damping Spheres for more Storm and Amulet Hate, 3 Lightning Axe for creatures that we have to deal with, such as Death Shadow, Grimag, Angler, Tarmogoyf, etc., 3 Nature's Claim to destroy anything that our opponents may be doing, and 2 Thoughtseize for combo decks. So, without further ado, slap a like if you think you'll enjoy this video, subscribe right down below if you want to see more modern content like this, and let's hop right into the games. Real quick, before we get into this video is sponsored by Rage Shadow. No, it's not, don't worry. If you feel like it though, you can check out my TCG player affiliate right down below. Now, let's head on into the games. We keep a pretty bad 1-lander and we are forced to ship it back. The second land is pretty good, having 2 lands, a Merchant of the Veil. We bought him a Narcomoeba, and we send it to them. They play an island and cast a Serum Visions. They pass the turn. Turn 1 we draw a Conflagrate, which doesn't seem the best. We play the Wooded Foothills and then pass it back. They play a second island and pass the turn. My guess is they're going to be holding up Remand. End of turn we crack the Wooded Foothills, shock in a Stomping Ground, and then cast Haggle. We discard Life from the Loam and then Dredge Loam, hitting a Shriekhorn, Stinkweed Imp, and a second Shriekhorn. On our draw step, we Dredge Stinkweed Imp, hitting a Creeping Chill, putting them down to 17 and putting us back up to 20. We play a tapped Forgotten Cave, and our life is full of regrets. We pass the turn back. We do have a Merchant of the Veil that we can haggle on the end step though, pitching Stinkweed Imp and then dredging it back again. They shock a Steam Vent and pass the turn. End of turn, we cast Haggle, discarding a Stinkweed Imp and dredging said Imp, hitting a Creeping Chill. We put them to 12, us up to 23, and then it goes to our turn. We dredge Loam for turn and hit nothing of relevance. We then cast the Ox of Agonas, waiting for it to get remanded, exiling a bunch of stuff from our graveyard. They cast Manamorphose in response, and then cast Remand, just like clockwork. They play a tapped Spiral Bluff Canal, and it definitely looks like there's Storm at this point. We dredge Thug on our upkeep, hitting a Life from the Loam, Bloodghast, and Wooded Foothills. We cast Life from the Loam, targeting the Wooded Foothills, aiming to make our land drop for the turn. We play the Wooded Foothills, bringing back 2 Bloodghasts, and putting 2 prized amalgam triggers on the stack. We pass the turn back. On our end step, we bring back the 2 prized amalgams. However, they cast Pyretic Ritual, and cast Gifts Ungiven in response. They get the standard pile of Manamorphose, Pyretic Ritual, Desperate Ritual, and Past in Flames. We put the 2 rituals into the graveyard, they grab the Manamorphose in Past in Flames, and then they let us get back our 2 amalgams. We then pass the turn back. They play a Shivan Reef, and then cast a Manamorphose. They play a Goblin Electromancer, and then proceed to storm off. And we fucking die. Sideboarding, we're going to be bringing in Damping Spheres and Ancient Grudge, as we think their main form of sideboard hate is either Grafdigger's Cage or Tormod's Crypt. Something along those lines. We trim a bunch of stuff, especially because Creeping Chill seems awful in this matchup. We trim a bunch of stuff, and then submit it back. We keep a pretty good hand with a Cathartic Reunion, 2 lands, 2 Dredgers, a second Cathartic Reunion, pretty nice, and an Ox of Agonas. We'll see if it's... Unfortunately, we don't have a Damping Sphere in hand, so we'll see if it's possible to erase whatever they're doing. We play a Wooded Foothills and pass the turn. They play an Island and cast a Sleight of Hand. End of turn, we crack Wooded Foothills and grab a tapped Blood Crypt. On our turn, we play a Copperline Gorge and then cast Cathartic Reunion, ditching Life from the Loam and Golgari Thug. In hindsight, it probably would have been better to ditch the Ox of Agonas here, but whatever. Hindsight 2020. We Dredge Thug, Dredge Loam, and then Dredge Imp, putting a ton of cards in the graveyard as well as a Narcomoeba and unfortunately a Damping Sphere. However, there is an Ancient Grudge in there as well, which is pretty nice, as well as a Forgotten Cave. No prized amalgam, sadly. They play a Spirebluff Canal, and then they cast a Baral. In hindsight as well, it probably would have been better to bring in Lightning Axes to stop the Baral, but whatever. We Dredge Loam on draw step, hitting a Narcomoeba, and I can't find my one of Conflagrate anywhere. We cast Cathartic Reunion, pitching an Ox and a Stinkweed Imp, dredging the Imp, and then drawing 2 cards, one of them being Damping Sphere. We get in with Narcomoeba and pass the turn. They play a Pyretic Ritual, Gifts Ungiven. They get the standard pile, we do the same thing, and then they proceed to storm off. And we fucking die. We mulligan a bad 5 and another no Dredge hand, down to 4, and we keep a decent hand with a Cathartic Reunion, 2 lands, a Shriekhorn, etc. Our ending opening hand is 2 lands, Life from the Loam, and a Cathartic Reunion. This isn't fantastic, but if our opponent is slow enough, we could be able to get the drop on them. They play a Mishra's Bauble, look at their top card, play Verdant Catacombs, and pass. They draw a card on our upkeep. We draw a Shriekhorn, excellent draw. We play a Mountain, cast the Shriekhorn, and mill ourselves for 2 with it. We hit a Stinkweed Imp and an Ox, fantastic. We pass the turn back. They play a second Verdant Catacombs, crack one of them, and shock a Watery Grave. I'm assuming there's Shadow at this point. They crack their second Verdant Catacombs and shock in an Overgrown Tomb. They then play a 3/4 Tarmogoyf. Yikes. On our upkeep, we mill ourselves for 2 more, hitting Narcomoeba and a Bloodstained Mire. Our Narco comes back. We dredge the Stinkweed Imp and hit a Creeping Chill, among other things. We also hit 2 Loams and a Thug. We play a Bloodstained Mire, crack it for a shocked Stomping Ground, and then cast Cathartic Reunion, discarding our 2 Dredgers. We dredge Imp, dredge Loam, and dredge Loam. We hit 2 Creeping Chills and a Narcomoeba, putting them all the way down to 5. When the Narcomoeba comes back, it puts a prized amalgam trigger on the stack. We pass the turn and get amalgam back on our end step. At this point, we're just gonna plan to loam back as many cards as possible so we can kill them with a Lethal Conflagrate. We can do this with just the cards in our hand if they take 1 more point of damage. They attack with the Tarmogoyf and we block with our 1/1 Narcomoeba. They cast the 8/8 Death Shadow and a second one. They pass the turn back. On our upkeep, we mill ourselves for 2 via Shriekhorn, hitting another Shriekhorn and a prized amalgam. We dredge Life from the Loam for turn, hitting another Narcomoeba, putting 1 more prized amalgam trigger on the stack. We cast Life from the Loam, targeting 3 fetch lands, and play 1 for turn, hoping to just have enough cards in hand to kill them with a Conflagrate next turn. So yeah, as I'm editing this, you probably noticed it, and I just did as well. I can attack them for 1 in the air with my Narcomoeba, and then discard the 4 cards I have in my hand to Conflagrate, killing them. Ah, hindsight is 2020, the joy of punting, here we are. We pass the turn, leaving up blocks for them, and bring back a prized amalgam on our end step. They head straight to combat. They swing with the team, and we put a prized amalgam in front of one and a narco in front of another. While they could cast Team or Battle Rage here, they actually don't have a red source to do that with. They play a Nurturing Peatland and pass the turn. We Dredge Thug on our upkeep because it really doesn't matter here. We fit our 4th Narco Amoeba. Interesting. That triggers our prized amalgam in the bin, but it really won't matter at this point. We can flagellate them for 5, hoping to not face a Stubborn Denial. They crack Peatland in response, looking for said denial. They cycle a Street Wraith, go into 3, looking for that Stubborn Denial. They find the Stubborn Denial, having them at 3. We attack with the Narco in the air, planning to set up a kill next turn. They go to 2 and we pass the turn back. We get the amalgam back on end step. At this point, I think we're just hoping to fade a Team or Battle Rage so we can kill them in the air next turn with our 2 flying Narco Amoebas. They go straight to combat once more. They attack with their 2 11/11 Death Shadows. I throw a prized amalgam in front of one of them, anticipating that they can't even cycle a Street Wraith. Never mind. We go down to 15, and they scoop it up. I bring in a Lightning Axe to try to snag an early Tarmogoyf or an early Death Shadow. I could bring in the Nature's Claims here, but I don't anticipate Shadow having that much graveyard hate, because as it stands, they don't have that much graveyard hate in their sideboard right now. We keep a pretty good first hand with 2 lands, a Haggle to pitch this Imp, as well as a Lightning Axe if we need to. This Conflagrate in our hand isn't amazing, but I think we can work around it. By the way, I just realized we won that last game on a Molt of 4. Pretty sweet. They play a turn 1 Mishra's Bauble and crack it looking at their top card. They play a Polluted Delta and crack it immediately, not liking their top card as evident by the Mishra's Bauble. They get a Breeding Pool shocked, and then they pass the turn. They draw on our upkeep, and we draw a Cathartic Reunion. Pretty good. We grab an Arid Mesa, and we crack it for a shocked Stomping Ground. We cast the Shriekhorn, and they Stubborn Denial it. Alright, that's decent. I would have liked that to resolve, but on the other hand, now they don't have a Stubborn Denial for our Cathartic Reunion next turn. They play a Blood Crypt and shock it. They then play a 3/4 Tarmogoyf, perfect target for my Lightning Axe. We cast the Lightning Axe on our upkeep, discarding the Stinkweed Imp so that we can dredge the Imp on our draw. We dredge said Imp and hit a Creeping Chill. They go down to 12 and us up to back to 20. We play a Wooded Foothills and pass the turn, planning to haggle on our end step. They play a Nurturing Peatland and play a 2/2 Death Shadow. And a second 2/2 Death Shadow. On their end step, we crack this Wooded Foothills for a mountain, and then cast Haggle. They're debating Stubborn Denial it, and they do, so our Haggle is countered. We don't even get to discard the Imp, but at this point it's whatever. We Dredge Loam on our upkeep, and hit a Narcomoeba. That puts a prized amalgam trigger on the stack. It looks like we have just enough cards in our graveyard to leave the prized amalgam in there and cast this Ox, so it looks like we're gonna do that. We cast the Ox, and at this point it can fight a Death Shadow pretty reasonably. We get another redundant amalgam trigger on the stack, and we discard our hand. We Dredge Imp, Dredge Loam, and then Dredge a second Loam. All we hit was 1 Narcomoeba, but that does put a second prized amalgam trigger on the stack for a second prized amalgam. We pass the turn. On our end step, we get 4 prized amalgam triggers, getting back 2 prized amalgams. They untap. They cycle a Street Wraith going down to 9, making their Death Shadows 4/4s. They tap a Peatland to cast a Dismember for full price, targeting our Ox. While that is not the end of the world because we can cast that Ox again, I'm a little sad we can't block either of their shadows here. Given that they're tapped out, I opt to take all the damage and go to 9. We do this so we can kill them on the crackback. That's kind of a questionable attack given that we do have exactly 8 power on the ground, and they are at 8 life after tapping their Peatland to dismember our Ox. We Dredge an Imp on our draw step, hitting a Creeping Chill. They go to 5. We go straight to combat, and then smack them for lethal, and they die. We lose another die roll. It looks like our unlucky day. We mull a mediocre 7 into a 6 with no discard LO, so it looks like we have to mull that as well. Looks like we're going down to 4 once again. Even though this hand is risky, we do decide to keep it. We bottom a Cathartic Reunion, 1 Merchant of the Veil, and the second Cathartic Reunion. This hand, while it's not ideal, only functioning off of 1 land, it is whatever, because we really don't want to go down to 3. They cast a free Once Upon a Time, reveal a Tarmogoyf, and play a Verdant Catacombs, cracking it. They shock an Overgrown Tomb, and cast Thoughtseize. Oh boy. They take away our Haggle. We draw a Blood Crypt for turn, which is great. Having a second land is quite good. We play Wooded Foothills and shock it, casting this here Shriekhorn. If they want to Thoughtseize us now, then they have to take our Stinkweed Imp, which isn't bad for us, if I'm gonna be honest. They play another Bloodstained Mire and crack it. They're gonna shock a Blood Crypt, going down all the way down to 10. They play a 4/5 Tarmogoyf and pass the turn back. On their end step, we mill ourselves for 2 via the Shriekhorn, hitting a Prize Amalgam and an Arid Mesa. On our upkeep, we mill ourselves for 2 more, hitting a Prize Amalgam and a Golgari Thug. Excellent. We hit a Creeping Chill, putting them down to 7. We shock a Blood Crypt and play this here Golgari Thug. Unfortunately, we were 1 card short of casting this Ox, but it's whatever at this point. At this point, I can't really tell if they're Jund or 4-color Shadow. 4-color is worse for us because they can Stubborn Denial or Conflagrates or other cards. They cast a Lightning Bolt targeting them. Nope, targeting my Golgari Thug. I lied. And we have a difficult choice here. Whatever we put on our library won't really matter because we're not going to draw it, but I'll put the Prize Amalgam on top anyways. We're just going to dredge it with Golgari Thug, so it's really not a big deal. They play a Shadow. It's a 6/6, and then head to combat. They smack us upside the head for 4 with the Goyf, putting us down to 14 and then pass the turn. On our upkeep, we mill ourselves for 2 via Shriekhorn, hitting a Prize Amalgam and a Cathartic Reunion, as expected. We dredge the Thug and hit nothing of value. We then play the Ox, getting a bunch of nonsense out of our graveyard, putting 2 Prize Amalgam triggers in the stack. We discard our hand, dredge an Imp, dredge a second Imp, and dredge a Thug. We only hit 2 Creeping Chills, not the 3 that we desperately needed, but we do get 2 Chump Blockers in the way of Narcomoeba. We put them all the way down to 1, so now their Fetches and Shocks, as well as Nurturing Peatlands, are all useless, and we pass the turn back feeling pretty good now that they're dead in the air via the Narcomoebas. We bring back our 2 Prize Amalgams on our end step, and we pass the turn. They scoop it up. Sideboard plan is basically the same one as last time. We're bringing the Lightning Axes to try to nab an early Death Shadow or Tarmogoyf, and we run it back. This is the second time that we've won on a mulligan to 4 against Death Shadow, so I think this is a pretty good matchup for us. Because they hurt themselves so much, especially if they don't know what they're up against, and we have our Creeping Chill, that seems pretty good for us indeed. We mulligan our first hand with 1 land and no dredgers, into a second pretty good hand with a Cathartic Reunion and a Loam. We do have a Shriekhorn, which is great as well, but we don't have that many lands. We keep this, bottoming a Creeping Chill. They play a Mishra's Bauble, and bauble themselves. They cycle a Straight Wraith going down to 18, and then play a Wooded Foothills, cracking it. They shock in a Blood Crypt, and cast a Monastery Swiftspear. That was something I was not expecting to see. I was expecting more of a Thoughtseize or Death Shadow, but whatever. They draw a card on our upkeep, putting them up to 4 cards in hand. We draw a Blood Crypt for turn, which is fine. We can play a Copperline Gorge and play a turn 1 Shriekhorn, as usual. We then pass the turn back. I think if we beat Death Shadow, it's honestly because they don't really know how to manage their life total properly, or they don't take into account that we have Creeping Chills in our deck, either one. They play Verdant Catacombs and crack it for a shocked Overgrown Tomb. We cycle a Street Wraith going down to 10 life, and at this point they are really at the mercy of the 4 Creeping Chills in our deck. Creeping Chill being a free Lightning Helix is insane against any deck that's really aggressive with their life total. They play a second Monastery Swiftspear, and then cast a Death Shadow, which is a 3/3 at this point. They crack in for 2 with their Swiftspears, putting us down to 17. On our end step, we mill ourselves for 2 with the Shriekhorn, hitting a Bloodstained Mire and a Bloodghast. We mill ourselves for 2 more on our upkeep, hitting a Prize Amalgam and a Conflagrate, and we take a natural draw for turn because we have to. It's a second Copperline Gorge. We play the Copperline Gorge, getting back the Bloodghast and putting an Amalgam trigger on the stack. We then cast Cathartic Reunion, discarding a life from the Loam and a Blood Crypt. We dredge Loam, and then unfortunately hit no other dredgers, but we do have a Shriekhorn in our hand, which is fine. We hit 1 Creeping Chill, putting them down to 7, and we attack with the Bloodghast because it can't block, so there's really no point keeping it in our hand anyways. We also have an Ox in our graveyard, which seems pretty good, especially if we can hit a Dredger off this mill 2 from the Shriekhorn. At this point, they have 10 power on board, and if they get a Team or Battle Rage, we're probably just dead. To be fair, we were drawing a lot of lands this game, though. They play a Bloodstained Mire, and immediately crack it, going down to 4 life. If they find a Shockland here, which they don't, they find a Swamp. They play another Death Shadow here, making a 9/9. They then play a 4/5 Tarmogoyf and head right to combat. They swing with all their creatures, we say no blocks, and they put us down to 9. They pass the turn. On our upkeep, we mill ourselves via 2 via the Shriekhorn, and we don't hit any dredgers, sadly. We draw a Stinkweed Imp, which is fine. We play a Wooded Foothills, bringing back a Bloodghast, and then crack the wooded foothills for a mountain. At this point, I realize I have a Conflagrate in hand, and then we just hit them for 4, and they die. Alright, looks like we have won the die roll, and that is a good start. This hand is fine. We have a Forgotten Key to cycle if we have another land draw if we need to. We do have a Haggle in case we're not fighting a Dredger. I think I'm going to go ahead and keep this hand. This Prized Amalgam is kind of awkward, as well as the Snark Amoeba, but whatever. We've got Haggle. Turn 1, let's play a Wooded Foothills and pass the turn, planning to cycle Forgotten Cave on the end step to find a good draw. They play a Mountain and pass the turn. We kirk our Wooded Foothills on end step and shock a Stomping Ground because the green mana is vital. And then cycle this Forgotten Cave and draw a Prized Amalgam. That's no bueno. We draw a Ox for turn, which is pretty good. We shock this here Blood Crypt, and then Cathartic Reunion, pitching 2 Amalgams. We draw a Stomping Ground, Creeping Chill, Bloodstained Mire. This hand is looking pretty awkward without any dredgers, but I think we're going to be fine. End of turn, they cast Burst Lightning on us. Oh boy, we're now down to 13. This doesn't seem like a very good hand against mono red. We need to get some Creeping Chill stat. They play a second mountain and cast a Monastery Swift Spear, and then cast a Lightning Bolt targeting us. We'll go down to 10 off of the Lightning Bolt, and then they attack for 2 with the Swift Spear, putting us down to 8 on turn 2. Seems pretty good. We draw a Prized Amalgam, which isn't great. We'll play a tapped Stomping Ground because we are concerned about our life total, and then cast Haggle, discarding an Ox of Agonas and drawing a Shriekhorn, which we will also cast. They untap, and we'll see if they can kill us. They have 5 cards in hand, so I think they probably will be able to. They play a Manamorphose, which basically just draws them a card and enables prowess on their creature, so it seems like a pretty good card to me. We really need to find some Dredger's stat. They play a Fiery Islet, so they are up to 3 mana this turn, and they crack the Fiery Islet. That is a very good sign for us. Looks like we will not be dying this turn. Excellent play. So they just have a Soul Scar Mage, which seems pretty good for us, especially because we can now dredge the mill ourselves for 2, get a Narcomoeba, get it back, trigger some Amalgams. I'm liking this. No blocks because we want to save this thing for some reason. Get back 2 Amalgams on the end step. On our upkeep, we'll mill 2 from the Shriekhorn and get a Copperline Gorge and an Ox of Agonas. Bloodstained Mire, we do that, get back this Bloodghast. And you know what we can do now? Let's hard cast this Creeping Chill. Put the knight under 17, we go up to 8. I think it's fine to swing with 1 Amalgam here. They get on to 14 and we pass the turn. It's kind of outstanding how we haven't had a chance to find any dredgers this game with like a Cathartic Reunion, a Haggle, and 4 mills off of a Shriekhorn, but whatever. They go right to combat. Swing with both of the creatures. We'll throw a Narcomoeba in front of one and a Prized Amalgam in front of the other. Looks like they're going to start casting some spells. They cast Lightning Bolt targeting our Prized Amalgam, giving a prowess trigger to both of their creatures. Confusing as why they did that post block, so now the Swift Spear remains blocked. Our Soul Scar Mage eats our Narcomoeba, and they pass the turn. On our upkeep, we activate Shriekhorn on ourselves, hit a Golgari Thug on Prized Amalgam, finally Golgari Thug, and that is nothing. We'll play a Bloodstained Mire, grabbing back one of the Bloodghasts that are in the graveyard, putting 2 Prized Amalgam triggers on the stack. Let's dredge this here, let's escape this here Ox. We get a couple of the triggers, ignore those redundant Prized Amalgam. Pitch our hand, dredge Thug, and draw 2 Life from the Loams. Let's cast Life from the Loam on this Forgotten Cave and Copperline Gorge. Get back those. Now we can cycle this Forgotten Cave if we want to dredge the Loam. Get in there for 3 with the Prized Amalgam, but not my Bloodghast for some reason. Put them down to 11 and pass the turn. Get 2 Prized Amalgams back on the end step. They go to their turn with 4 cards in hand. I'm pretty sure we're just dead to burn here, but you never know. We could always cycle the Forgotten Cave to try to dredge this Life from the Loam and hit a Creeping Chill or 2. They play a Mountain. It looks like they are pretty flooded. They then cast another Soul Scar Mage, which we're not too scared about. And then they're going to combat. No attacks. That is fantastic for us. We will crack this Bloodstained Mire on end step, going down to 7 to grab a Mountain. And then cycle this Forgotten Cave, dredging Life from the Loam, hitting 2 Creeping Chills, putting them down to 5, and putting us up to 13, basically out of range of any burn spells they can have. We Life from the Loam back 3 lands because we do have the Conflagrate in our graveyard, and then Conflagrate them, paying 2 red, discarding a bunch of random cards, and blast them to death. On to game 2. Sideboarding is pretty hard in this deck because it is a linear strategy, so you kind of just do what your deck wants to do. We're going to bring in Lightning Axe to kill some of their prowess creatures nice and early, and then we just trim a Bloodghast, Merchant of the Veil, and Prized Amalgam. I was considering bringing in Nature's Claims to kill some redundant Shriekhorns in the late game when they've already been used up to gain some life, but I think that what we have here is just better. We really need to hit some Creeping Seals off the top to essentially start us at 32 life, and then to start at whatever they start at. This hand's pretty good. We have a land, which does seem kind of risky, but we also have a Lightning Axe to deal with one of their early creatures, as well as a Shriekhorn. They play a Soulscar Mage turn 1, and then we draw a Life from the Loam, which is pretty good. I play the Shriekhorn here instead of the Lightning Axe because I don't think they can do too much damage early game. Of course, I could always be wrong. Let's see how much they attack for. They only hit me for 1, so it looks like my play was paying off. They play a Runaway Steamkin on second main phase. On their end step, I mill myself for 2, hitting Life from the Loam and a Bloodghast. Upkeep, I mill 2 more, hitting a Lightning Axe and a Stinkweed Imp. Dredge Stinkweed Imp for turn, we hit a Narcomoeba, which unfortunately there's nothing in the graveyard. We will Lightning Axe the Runaway Steamkin, discarding a Prized Amalgam, and then pass the turn back. They play a Sunbaked Canyon. It looks like they have 8 Horizon lands with the 4 Fiery Island and 4 Sunbaked Canyon, maybe. I don't know their entire deck list, but here we are. They get in for 1 with Soulscar Mage. We're going to block with the Narcomoeba. And they just head to damage. They play a second Runaway Steamkin, which is rather annoying. And then cast Soulscar Mage, getting a 1/1 counter on the Steamkin, pushing it up to a 2/2, and then pass the turn. On our upkeep, we mill ourselves with Shriekhorn, hitting a Golgari Thug and a Mountain. I think we're just going to take a natural draw step to try to find a land, which we don't hit. That is awkward. And then we just pass the turn. The thing about Dredge is that you really need at least 2 lands for the deck to function well when you're able to cast your Life from the Loams and your Cathartic Reunions. They cast a Crash Through, which is a free cantrip that basically lightning bolts us because of the prowess triggers. They head to combat, swing with all of their guys. We'll be taking 7 here. Before damage, they cast a lightning bolt targeting us, putting us down to 14 and generating another prowess trigger on all of their creatures. We take 10 and go down to 4. They cast Light Up the Stage in their second main phase with 3 mana that they generated off of the Runaway Steamkin. The Runaway Steamkin is now a 1/1 going to a 2/2, and they get to exile the top 2 cards of the library, which are a Lightning Bolt and a Bedlam Reveler. They only have 3 cards in their graveyard right now, so Bedlam Reveler still costs 5 mana, but they can cast the Lightning Bolt at our face next turn, as well as if they have any other draw spell. They cast a Lightning Bolt on us now, putting us down to 1, generating a Runaway Steamkin trigger and 2 prowess triggers, which won't matter because it is post-combat. They pass the turn back. We're going to Dredge a Stinkweed Imp here because we want to hit a Narco to bring back some Prized Amalgams, as well as many Creeping Chills as we can. We hit absolutely nothing. Fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and scoop it up because we are dead. Very, very dead. Sideboard plan is probably just going to be keeping it the same. We just want to be on the play and keep a hand with more than 1 land, so let's run it right back. Well, this is a decent hand. 2 of our Creeping Chills are in our hand, as well as we don't have any way to discard this Stinkweed that's in our hand, so we're going to go ahead and mulligan. This hand is much better. It has a Shriekhorn, a Dredger, and a Cathartic Reunion, as well as a Bloodghast, so we'll keep and chuck a Wooded Foothills to the bottom of our library. Turn 1, we play a Copperline Gorge, play a Shriekhorn, and then pass the turn back. They play a Mountain, and then cast a Monastery Swift Spear, and crack it in for 1. Before damage, we're going to use our Shriekhorn to see if we can hit a Narcomoeba, but we can't. However, we hit a Bloodghast and a Merchant of the Veil. On our upkeep, we're going to mill ourselves for 2 more via the Shriekhorn, hitting a Lightning Axe and a Cathartic Reunion, and draw for turn. We play the Copperline Gorge, which brings back the Bloodghast, and then we cast a Cathartic Reunion, discarding Life from the Loam and a Bloodghast. We Dredge Loam, hit a Thug, which we Dredge, and we hit a Stinkweed Imp, which we Dredge. All we get out of that was 1 Creeping Chill trigger, which we use, putting them down to 17 and us to 22. We pass the turn back to them. On their turn, they play a fancy new Nyx Mountain, and then cast a Manamorphose, generating a Prowess trigger on their Swift Spear, adding 2 red to their mana pool and drawing a card. They then cast a Lightning Bolt, targeting our Bloodghast for some reason, generating a Prowess trigger, 1 red mana floating in their mana pool. They let it die and go to combat, whacking us for 3 and putting us down to 19. On our upkeep, we use the last Shriekhorn counter to mill ourselves, flipping over a Creeping Chill and a Bloodghast. That's cool. We go back up to 22, put them down to 14, and then Dredge a Golgari Thug for turn. We hit a 3rd Creeping Chill, putting them down to 11 and us all the way up to 25. We play a Wooded Foothills, getting back 2 Bloodghasts. And then they cast Surgical Extraction, targeting our Bloodghast in response. That's pretty annoying. They see our hand of Loam, Thug, and Imp, and then decide to exile the rest of our cards from our library. I now realize, because hindsight is 2020. Wait, they didn't exile the Bloodghast from our graveyard. Interesting. We could have cast the Wooded Foothills. We could have cracked the Wooded Foothills to get them back in response, but so be it. We cast Life from the Loam, returning Mountain, Copperline Gorge, and a Forgotten Cave. And at this point, you can really see how Life from the Loam, getting back Forgotten Cave, is rather good. We crack the Wooded Foothills, get a Mountain, and cycle the Forgotten Cave, dredging Life from the Loam. We hit 2 Oxes and a Conflagrate. Nice. Because they're at 9 because of the Creeping Shields, we crack in there for 4 with our Bloodghast and put them down to 5. We then pass the turn. They play a Fiery Islet, and then crack the Fiery Islet, putting them up to 5 cards in hand with 1 mana left. At 24 life, I don't really see what they can do from here. They pass turn with the Swift Spear. We go and draw and dredge Life from the Loam, hitting a Creeping Chill and a Narcomoeba. Get the Narcomoeba back, putting them down to 2 with Creeping Chill, and they scoop it up. So yeah, as it turns out, having 4 free Lightning Helixes against your deck, Mono Red Prowess can't do much. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed, be sure to slap a like on it and subscribe if you haven't yet. And as always, I'm not sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, but you can use my TCG Player affiliate link. Links right down below in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you have any other Modern, Pioneer, maybe even EDH decks you want me to check out, drop it in the comments below and let me know what you want me to play. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.